excited. You already know the deal. The Sports Carnage Podcast post-game review show. Usually we do one for Michigan and Michigan State. Thankfully, they played each other this week, so we can just combine them both into one, which is good because Michigan never shows us any love on the YouTube or on the post-games anyway, as Michigan State dominated, much like this game. Today is very special because we do have a Michigan fan with us. Usually it's just me, Sparty Flappy. Once again, Michigan is our bitch again, is what it says on the back. Boom, Druck Sparty hat. But we do have Paul Roshan. If you guys have listened to the podcast, you surely know who this man is. He came over. A.J. Riley came over as well. Unfortunately, he had to leave. He has a family, all that boring stuff. But we do have an unbiased post-game reaction this time. Or I guess it's just biased. One side, one side from Michigan, one side from Michigan State. So, Paul, we obviously watched the game together. Very exciting for me. Very disappointing for you. What do you think the keys were to Michigan losing that game? Not only that game, but that lead. Because at the time, they seemed like they were dominating the game. It was 30-14.
There are the amount of things that had to go awry for Michigan State to complete a fantastic comeback. Innumerable. Let's say innumerable. A few things are going to be the focus of everybody. A few things are going to be the focus of everybody post-game.
No sound. Oh, you're right. Absolutely. My bad. Can you guys hear us now?
What is this side?
That side is the audio. This side is the hearing. Thank you.
You're going to have to do that again.
Thank you, Chris was here. So, as I was saying, Sports Carnage post-game podcast. Sports Carnage podcast, I should say. Me and Paul are two of the 5 or 6 rotating hosts that we have, but we're on the most episodes, so it's really us. So, what you guys probably can tell by our wardrobe, Michigan State fan, Michigan fan. My shirt says, once again, Michigan is our bitch again, which is true. Paul Bunyan, 2-year stay in East Lansing. He renewed his lease. Paul, obviously a Michigan fan, as you can tell by his shirt, where his muscles are popping out of it. And usually it's just me here. So usually we have a pretty biased post-game reaction. We try to be unbiased, but it doesn't always come through. But today, Paul was gracious enough to come over. So was AJ from the podcast, but AJ had to leave, unfortunately, which is pretty good. I got a pretty small couch. We can only fit 2 of us on here. Again, especially with Paul's arms. So what I do want to get is Paul's reaction to the game, because Michigan had a 16-point lead in the game, and at a time it looked like they were going to dominate and run away with the game. Obviously, we know how the game ended, and I want to hear why you think Michigan let the game slip away.
Blowing a 30-14 fourth quarter lead, although it was kind of more 30-20.
Yeah, they scored right at the beginning of the fourth quarter.
No, 30-14 and 30-20.
30-22. Because they had the 2-point conversions.
My math is bad. I'm still a little flustered, and you're the one on the Ryan juice.
Oh boy!
Innumerable things led to that outcome. A lot of things are going to be the focus, emotionally, and especially people that have been on Jim's case for a long time are going to point to things like putting J.J. McCarthy in the game and watching him have a miscommunication with Blake Corum in the backfield that directly led to another touchdown by Michigan State, because that seems to be all that you guys scored today is touchdowns. Yeah. After a first half, that Mike McDonald's defense did a pretty darn good job keeping the Spartans' offense in check. Outside of really a few broken plays with some bad tackling, that defense, kind of like we saw at Nebraska, really fell apart in the second half. And against the lesser team in Nebraska, it was enough to hold on. Here in East Lansing today, obviously it wasn't. And one of the most frustrating things, and it's kind of hard to... You want to, especially at first glance, the defense was horrible in the second half, especially the fourth quarter on, but really you started seeing the cracks in the third quarter. But what was so frustrating is it's easy. Everyone wants to sit back and be like, oh, you got out-coached. Oh, Jim made mistakes. Oh, you called bad plays. It's easy to do. But if you look at fundamentally the things that happened in the game, the tackling, I have not seen tackling that poor in a Michigan uniform since Rich Rod was the coach. I mean, and that's not even hyperbolic. This game, to me, just the way that it unfolded, the way this team has played this season, the way that we blew that lead, this to me is worse than trouble at the snap. And I don't know, it's probably not something a sentiment that's going to be shared by a lot of Michigan fans, because that's so seared into their memory about how horrible it was. But this year is a lot different season. The expectations are different. The way these two teams have played is different. If you look back at Trouble at the Snap, that was a game that a lot of people did not expect Michigan to win, especially at the beginning of the season. I know Michigan was favored in 2015 by the time the game rolled around, but that was a game that still a lot of people were on MSU. And if MSU was a playoff team that year, they went to the playoff. This is good.
Sort of. But yeah, we went.
Yeah, you did
we
go.
there.
Even if you don't score,
we got the bowl swag. That's what happened. We got the playoff swag.
There is a box score of the game. It did happen. So this year, it feels a little different because even though Michigan State is ranked very highly, and they're going to shoot up even more after this game, they're probably going to be around top 5, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think we're going to be 5th.
Right
it would be my
there.
guess.
It's going to be right around there for sure. I still think that this Michigan State team isn't as good as 2015. And that's probably, I don't know how, that sentiment might be unpopular, but if I had to play a Michigan State team, like I would rather play this team than 2015.
Yeah, I think we're similar. I think the difference is Connor Cook at quarterback. I loved Connor Cook in college. And today wasn't the Peyton Thorne show. It was the Kenneth Walker show. 5 touchdowns, 8.6 yards a carry. If you're going to talk about like a Heisman moment today for Kenneth Walker, that was today. I'd still probably take the 2015 team over us. One thing I am interested in, because you mentioned it and Christian mentioned it here in the chat, and I know you're a big Harbaugh guy, is you said Michigan got outcoached, period. So what would be your reaction to that? Because again, I know you're a bigger fan of Jim than a lot of the Michigan fan contingent, and today's loss, like you said, is going to be one where fans pin it on him. Why'd you have JJ in the game? Why didn't you do X, Y, and Z? And it feels like every time Michigan loses, Harbaugh gets the blame, right? It's either Harbaugh or the quarterback.
Absolutely. It's how it happens pretty much every time. Lately, even when we've played subpar, it's been the quarterback getting the blame. But you'd have to be a real hater to blame Cade for this game because Cade played pretty darn well. And even on the last interception that a lot of people want to put on him, I put that a lot more on the tight end than him. That wasn't that bad of a ball. You have to go up and get that. As a receiver, as a tight end, you know that you have to go to the ball. You cannot sit. And the Eric All, I believe it was, on that interception, not only did he wait for the ball, but he was still drifting backwards, waiting for the ball to come upfield. That was extremely poor. That should have been incompletion at the absolute worst. But regarding your question about the coaches, in Jim getting out coached, I'm not sure. So if you look at what coaches do, especially a head coach in this situation, so Jim does not call plays of any kind. The offense is run entirely by Josh Gaddis. The defense is run entirely by Mike McDonald. Jim Harbaugh is not calling plays. Jim Harbaugh is managing the game. He does his coaching during the week, and then when it's game day, he's managing the game. I don't know from a game management perspective what you are going to nitpick with what Michigan did today to say that this loss is on Jim. If you want to say that in the second half our play calling could have been better, if you want to say...
I think the thing would be JJ being in on the play that they fumbled.
Okay.
After fumbling before and then not getting scooped up.
For sure.
Right when Ronald Williams kicked it out of bounds.
For sure. But that's... You look at that as... One, JJ was passing on that play. That was play action, or it was actually may have been an RPO. It looked like because of the way that the communication was. I don't know what the play call was there, and I haven't looked at it since, but that could have been an RPO because Corum obviously, it looked like Corum thought he was getting the ball, but JJ was clearly pulling the ball, and obviously a miscommunication happened there that can't happen. I don't know whose fault that was. It's hard to sit here and say whose fault that is, but if you cannot trust a quarterback, and I know that a lot of people don't like running 2 quarterbacks out there, right?
Yeah,
but
they don't like the platoon.
A lot of those same people have cried for JJ to start all year. They want him to just straight up play.
I'm one of them, and my voodoo worked because JJ got in the game and Michigan State won.
It wasn't great, but it's something we've done all season, and it's something that has worked. It has not. Everybody is going to harp on it because JJ, he did cough the game up. I mean, that is true. That fumble really
is the turning point.
If you were to point to one singular play in the game, that fumble was huge. I mean, Michigan had just gone ahead, and then I believe forced Michigan State to go 3 and out. It was a 3 and out.
Yeah, after Kenneth Walker had an 8-yard run on first down.
Now you have
second and 2. I think it was a penalty, and then they got into like 3rd and 9. Incomplete or something, and they had to punt it away.
And now you have the chance to put the game away, right? Michigan has a chance to completely put the game. If Michigan goes on the field and scores a touchdown, you can say game over. Michigan State's not coming back at that point. So the offense mentality is go out there and score a touchdown, and instead they cough up the ball up immediately, putting Michigan State in fantastic field position to where they eventually scored a touchdown. If you look at the offense of that instance, so what do we do when JJ comes in? We run the ball primarily, right?
Yep. Except for the touchdown he threw.
Except for the touchdown. But we run the ball a lot with him. We run a lot of option with him. When he's in the game, it's primarily as a running threat. We brought him in the game, and that was going to be a play-action pass. And you can imagine there's a very good chance there was going to be a deep shot attached to that. We were playing aggressive. We were having a quarterback come in that you think maybe the defense is going to think run, right? Whether it's him running or handing the ball off, you think maybe the defense is going to think run. You're going to run hard play action to sell it. Maybe we're going to try to take a shot with JJ and really put the nail in this coffin, really put this game away. It is an aggressive move by the coaches, and it backfired because you fumbled the exchange, okay? Or the fake exchange, really. You fumbled it. But to just in retrospect to go back and be like, wow, JJ shouldn't have been in that position. Why would you do that? This is what we've done all season. I have not heard anybody complain. Maybe you have.
Well, I have heard people
complain that he gets in the game or that he's not playing more.
That he's in the game. Well, both, I guess. But that he's in the game because they think it throws Cade off rhythm. And today, Cade wasn't off rhythm really at all. Cade played 383 passing yards, which is, to me, like if you're going to think of like a comedy point of the game, if you went into this game and said Cade McNamara was going to have 380 plus yards, the whole world would have said Michigan by 20, right? Michigan by 30. It's not even going to be close. And it was kind of the inverse of what you thought these two offenses would do. You know, Michigan State has been known this year for the big play, right? The flea flickers, the 75-yard touchdowns to start the game. So if Michigan State was going to win, you figure they probably had to get a couple of those. And if Michigan was going to win, it was probably because they were just going to lean on Corum and on Haskins to wear Michigan State's defensive line down and run out the game. You thought it'd probably be opposite, and it's just kind of funny the inverse happened, right? Kenneth Walker had, I don't know how many total yards he finished with. The box score's on my phone. I don't really want to check it. I know he had over 8.5 yards of carry, and he had 5 touchdowns.
I believe it was 197 yards.
Yeah, insane. And 5 touchdowns. And so to me, that's the biggest credit Michigan State gets in this game is going down 10-0 early, fighting back from that to take the lead 14-13. And then they also went down 30-14. They tie it up 30-30, went down 33-30, and then ended up scoring what was going to become the game-winning touchdown after JJ fumbled it. So I think Michigan State did a really good job of fighting back and really not straying away from their game plan, because it's easy when you're down 16 points to stop running the ball. But when they got in position to give Kenneth Walker the ball, to give him a chance to make plays, to give him a chance in the red zone, to get into the end zone, it's something that they were able to do and something that they were able to execute. And as far as like Michigan went, one thing that's interesting too, and I honestly I don't know how much you guys care about this, but the Michigan receiver Andrell Anthony, who had the 93-yard touchdown and then had the touchdown when JJ came in, the really tough catch in the end zone. That was a guy who was predicted for months and months and months to go to Michigan State. He's from East Lansing. I think he went to East Lansing High School. So that was a Michigan State guy through and through. And then, last second, Michigan was able to come scoop him up right before he committed. And if his play was the difference in the game, to me, and if you know a little bit about recruiting, and even if you follow it a little bit, that would have stung extra hard, because it was a guy that honestly shouldn't have been in maize and blue. So if he ended up beating you, that would have been an extra dagger in the heart. As much as losing to Michigan sucks, losing to Michigan because of his play would have made it so much worse, just for me.
And it kind of sucks because his awesome debut, essentially, he's a freshman this season. And it's not the first time he's gotten on the field, but it's certainly the first time that most fans have noticed him.
I think it was his first catch, the 93-yard catch.
It was, yes. It was his first collegiate catch. So really, while he has gotten a couple snaps this season, he has been integrated very slowly. He's a true freshman. He's 18 years old. This really felt like his debut, right? This is his coming out party.
In his hometown.
And unfortunately, it becomes a footnote, basically, because they didn't win the football game. It could have been a celebration, whereas now it's a footnote. But again, the game really comes down, this game specifically came down to mistakes by Michigan. Whether you want to talk about how horrible the tackling was, you look at so many of Kenneth's run, Kenneth was awesome tonight. Kenneth Walker was absolutely fabulous, right? But how many times did he not get touched? Did he make guys completely whiff? Now, you have to give him credit for doing that, right?
Like Bear Sanders.
To be slippery, to not get touched, and to be able to break those tackles. But the effort and the mistakes by the Michigan defense tonight, really, especially in the second half, were really the story of the game. And then you have the mistakes on offense by Michigan. It started early. You had, I want to say on the third drive of the game, you had a big drop by Blake Corum. Might have even been the second drive of the game. You had that big drop by Blake Corum on third down that would have led to a big play. Was the only drive Michigan didn't score on in the first half, right? And you had late in the game.
That and the fake punt, right? Was that first half?
I don't remember if that was in the first half, but yes, that's another mistake. The fake punt that wasn't supposed to be a fake punt, and he bobbled the snap, and he ended up having to run with it. Although that one wasn't, that one didn't have a huge effect on the outcome of the game, I don't think. But just so many miscues, drop balls, a tight end not going to get a ball at the end of the game to cause an interception. The drive before that, you have, I think it was Cornelius Johnson had the ball hit him in the stomach and he didn't catch it. On a deep shot from Cade. Just so many mistakes like that, both offense and defense, and then red zone. So if you guys listen to the podcast at all, the Sports Carnage podcast.
That's right. Apple Podcast, Spotify, and Podbean.
It's something that we talked about a lot and that I really harped on, and something that really bothers me about Josh Gaddis. And listen, a lot of things by anyone that listens to the Sports Carnage podcast know a lot of things bother me about Josh Gaddis. But his red zone play calling has been abhorrent. And the amount of field goals that we've had to settle for in the red zone are a problem. And that was the other story of today's game. Michigan played kind of a dominant game. And they looked dominant for most of the game until the fourth quarter collapse. Michigan gained 550 yards of offense today. 550 yards. They had 26 first downs, and they had the ball for 35 minutes today. 35 minutes, 550 yards. Michigan State didn't hit 400 yards. And Michigan State won the only stat that matters, right? They won on the scoreboard, and that's all that matters. But if you look at the box score, you look at how Cade threw for 1,000,000 yards, and Michigan had time and possession. They had all the yardage, the first downs. You would think, wow, Michigan won this game by double digits. But they didn't, and that comes down to mistakes. The story of today's game was mistakes, whether it was the missed tackles, the complete whiffs, the drop passes, the turnover. And you can harp on coaching all you want. You can say, oh, Jim's got to manage the game better. What is he going to do? Is he going to tell guys, hey, you need to wrap up. You got to wrap up. You have to catch the ball when it's in your hands. I mean, how much, at the end of the day, how much can you do as a head coach on game day in that situation to change the outcome with all of the mistakes?
And I think that was really one of the big differences is Michigan had, when they tried to go downfield, I know Cade McNamara is not viewed as this quarterback that can throw the ball, downfield, right? But Michigan had chances. They had the flea flicker where he just overthrew Andrel Anthony in the end zone.
Scored a touchdown the next play.
They had the Cornelius Johnson play where obviously he dropped it. It was probably a bit underthrown, but he still should have caught it because it literally just right through his body. And then even on the last play where it necessarily wasn't a deep play, but the play where Michigan State really put the game away, the fourth down, I thought the Michigan State defender had a hand on the hip of, I think it was Cornelius Johnson too, the intended receiver. And obviously those plays get called and don't get called in football, kind of toss-up plays. But I thought Michigan had some chances to win. I mean, both teams did. They scored 70 combined points. And for the defense, one of the things that we talked about on the podcast, I thought it was pretty interesting how it played out in this game, because if it played out like I said it was going to play out, Michigan State should have won. But then what happened afterwards, you wouldn't have thought Michigan State would have won at all, is on the podcast I said that Michigan State had to win first down. So what I meant by that is Michigan had to constantly be in 2nd and 9, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 8 situations. And they were. Even early in the game, the problem was they kept converting. They kept throwing to Eric All for 11, 12 yards and just moving the chains. So even though they were winning the first down, I, as a Michigan State fan, was getting really frustrated that Michigan was able to move the ball down the field. Towards the end of the game, I thought they tightened that up a little bit. Obviously, on the last possession, they had the interception. Well, that wasn't the last one. Oh yeah, it was. Right, because they had the fourth down stop. And then they picked it off because they went on offense and they're 3 and out. Michigan used their timeouts. So for me, it was kind of an inverse again, just of how I thought the game would go and the keys I thought for each team would be for Michigan State to win. I didn't think they could continuously give up 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9s. And that's just not Michigan State. I know that's Magic Johnson level analysis. The team that wins the turnover battle is going to win the game. The team that can get off the field on 3rd down. It's all very basic football stuff. But it was really key for Michigan State. Going into the game, what I thought I thought for the first even 3 quarters, Michigan was able to kind of impose their will there. the problem was, and has been for Michigan, not that they've lost games because of it except for this one, was the red zone offense, right? Because what good is a drive, even if you're converting 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, if it only results in 3 points? You get more points on the board, but you hear the adage all the time is field goals get you beat, right? So when Michigan's in the red zone, and I think Moody had 3 field goals today.
4.
4. So, yeah, Moody had 4 field goals today, and that's, if you scored a touchdown on every play, that's 4 more points. That's 16 more points on the board, and obviously if everyone goes 100% in the red zone, they're probably going to win the game. But Michigan probably didn't have but 7 or 8 red zone attempts, total. So for half of those to end in field goals is what really aided Michigan State, because they were able to punch those scores in when Michigan State's red zone offense wasn't so great either, right? When they were scoring, it was on big plays. It was on plays of over at least 20 yards where they wouldn't be in the red zone. And then today, when they got down by the red zone, they gave it to their horse, they gave it to their Heisman contender, and he was able to punch it in damn near every time, right? 5 touchdowns for Kenneth Walker today. Can't be overstated how great of a game this was for him. And I don't think he's going to win the Heisman, but I think this game gets him back into the I'm going to New York conversation. Because he was slipping a little bit, didn't have that great of a game against Indiana, but to have 5 touchdowns on the game that was the center of the college football universe today, and to have a couple of those touchdowns be some pretty big runs, some highlight runs, I think that at least gives Kenneth Walker a shot to get in New York for the first Michigan State player since I don't even know when. You guys could probably tell me. I assume a couple of you watching are older than me, and you guys know. He said, take a drink, you're stressing me out. Absolutely.
You don't have to tell her.
Right, yeah, you gotta tell me twice.
Never, ever.
Gordon. But I thought, obviously Kenneth Walker carried the game for Michigan State. And it's funny because that's like I don't want to say like casual fan, but that is like the casual fan analysis, right? Is if you're just going into this game and you didn't really know so much about these two teams, you just knew Kenneth Walker led the nation in rushing. You'd be like, well, Michigan State has to give Kenneth Walker the ball, and they're going to win, right? If you're just looking at box scores, and that's kind of how it played out. And I don't think a lot of football games end up playing out that way. So for Michigan State, I mean, they were carried really by one guy. I thought the defense made some plays when they needed to. Obviously, they had the interception at the end. And Xavier Henderson had a really bad I thought he took a really bad angle on the first Michigan 90-yard touchdown. But other than that, I thought he played really well. I thought he tackled well. Michigan State brought him down into the box a couple times when I thought it benefited them, where Michigan only got like a 1 or 2 yard run, and they were able to stuff them there. And one thing that Paul talked about on the podcast is Michigan doesn't have a lot of negative plays, whether it be sacks or like negative runs. And there were a couple today. There weren't so many, right? Michigan State didn't Devin Gardner dominate them, negative 48 rushing yards or anything like that. But there were at least 2 or 3 instances where Michigan handed the ball off to Corum or Haskins, and they went backwards, right? It was -2, -3 yards. And again, just because Michigan hasn't faced that at all this year, I thought that was something that was really impressive for Michigan State and what they were able to do on the defensive end. And you hear bend, don't break. You don't want to give up 33 points or 30 points to anybody. 33, right? 37, 33. You don't want to give up 33 points to anybody because you probably expect to lose that game. But I thought, obviously, they made the stops when it mattered, and Michigan only scored 10 points in the second half. Right, 23 in the first half, 10 in the second half. And Michigan State came out, made some of the adjustments, had some help from Michigan, definitely. You had the J.J. McCarthy fumble, but I thought Michigan State played a much better game in the second half, and I think, obviously, the scoreboard bore that out. Sparty fan here. Michigan was robbed. That was a fumble recovery for a touchdown. Paul agrees with you 100%.
Absolutely. What I don't want to do, because one is just going to make me really mad, I don't want to get into the officiating too much. That 4-point swing was massive in the game, and it would have helped Michigan really put this game away.
Right, Gordon. His knee wasn't down, his shin was down.
His shin was down after he lost control of the ball. But regardless, I mean, that wasn't. Look at the end of the game on the 4th and 3 on Michigan's second to last drive when they were in the red zone, and you got a receiver being mugged. That's why Cade threw the ball where he threw it. and no call. You're not gonna control for the officiating. Michigan definitely got the short end of the stick today, but Michigan should have been able to win without their own mistakes. And Michigan made too many of their own mistakes. We talked about how they dominated the box score because they dominated most of the game on the field. They just made too many mistakes. Well, one thing that I've seen so many people. Gordon, you want me to smile?
Hey, so he's mad for you. Let's go, Gordon. Smile, Paul.
There's not going to be too much smile
until a few weeks until you play OSU.
And I don't want to play OSU this season either. I do hope we go to Happy Valley and at least get a decent win there. But by the hell,
because you hate James Franklin.
I
hate Penn State.
I do really
hate Franklin.
Ooh, I really do hate James Franklin.
Well, he's gone anyway.
Problem is Penn State's probably not going to be ranked by the time we play them after they get smacked by Ohio State today.
It's probably not. Somebody asked us before who you have, Ohio State or Penn State. Ohio State. Positively.
By a million. By 3 touchdowns at least.
Yeah.
I don't think Penn State.
Can somebody check in on Taylor Lewan for me? Do any of you have his phone number? Can you make sure he's not on some kind of watch? Because boy.
What I would like for anybody that is watching that keeps pointing to coaching, I've seen it plenty in the comments. I've seen it plenty on Twitter. I've seen it plenty everywhere.
And you're correct. 2-0 against Harbaugh.
Anyone that says, "Oh, Jim lost this game," "Oh, McDonald lost this game," I want you to be more specific. Don't say, "Oh, they got outcoached." Don't say Jim never wins big football games. I want you to be specific. Tell me what these coaches did that they should have done differently that would have led to a different outcome. Because when you say Jim lost the game, we talk from a game management perspective. How many of the things that Jim is making decisions on Saturdays should have been done differently? The only thing that most people are going to point to is J.J. McCarthy being in the football game, which is ironic because of how many people want J.J. McCarthy to start and play all season. But I just don't think from a coaching perspective, especially at the head coach level, there's a lot that could have been done different. There's a lot of nitpicking you can do, both with the defense and the offense, even though the offense put 33 points on the board and looked pretty good for most of the game. Bogging down in the red zone because of atrocious red zone play calling has been a staple of Josh Gaddis, and many poor things have been a staple of Josh Gaddis. But one thing, if you look at the later the game went on, and you can say that Michigan State made some adjustments to it, in that they mixed up coverages a little bit and they dropped guys back more, but the middle of the field was still open a lot, and it's something that we hit early and often in this football game, and then went away from it, and especially in the red zone. And you look at it, when was it Sanders still that caught the slant for a touchdown after the flea flicker?
Yes.
I think it was Sanders still.
Yeah.
That was one of that is an example of how we succeed in the red zone, right? So we had the flea flicker, it was unsuccessful. We just missed on the flicker to I think Andrell Anthony, and then the next play we had kind of a deeper slant that got in the end zone, hitting over the middle of the field. We went away from that later in the game when we were trying to put the game away in the third and fourth quarter. We did not utilize that side of the field much. And what you talked about it on podcasts, it makes it really difficult, especially for a quarterback like Cade, in not using the things that he's best at. Is when all these throws are going to the outside of the hashes.
Listen to Don and put JJ in.
Yeah, that's not. Listen.
There you go, Matt. Tell him. That's Matthew Batson from the Sports Carnage podcast as well. If you guys are listening on Facebook right now, great. We obviously love you. But if you're listening on YouTube and you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe bell right there so you can get all this fun content that we drop after every game.
In post games.
And after the Pistons, Cade Cunningham making his debut tonight. Maybe one Cade can get a win, right?
Are you doing post game on Pistons night too?
Goddamn right. It's going to be my first one because I was at the opener, so I couldn't. I was in Detroit traffic, which is brutal. But Cade Cunningham making his debut tonight. Hopefully the Pistons get their first win. I'll for sure be on the post game for that.
And post games are fun, but if you guys want to know what's going to happen before the games are played, you should definitely check out the Sports Carnage podcast, which is everywhere that podcasts are played, whether it's Spotify, iTunes, Podbean, wherever you listen to your podcast.
You're like a pro at this.
Sports Carnage podcast. I have heard you do it a lot.
If you're on the YouTube, those links are in the description as well.
Absolutely. But back to the game, and I see, and this is really predictable. I see nothing about what the coaches could have done differently. Let's read Ron Wilson's comment real quick. He says, "I'm not one to blame the refs, but yeah, some huge no calls and blown calls."
Sounds like you're about to blame the refs, Ron.
Johnson dropped a couple that hit him in the numbers, right in the stomach. Right in the stomach.
Right, not even the numbers.
And it's crazy, too.
Right in the gut.
He jumps in the air for a pass to hit him in the stomach. If a pass hits you in the stomach while you're in the air, you probably did not need to jump like that for that pass. That is an egregious misreading of that pass. That is horrible. Blake had a rare drop, which was a huge one. We talked about that. It's the only drive.
Really, it was at least a 30-yard gain, if not a touchdown.
The only drive that Michigan didn't score on in the first half was Blake's drop on. I want to say it was 3rd and 5, and that like Ryan just said, that play would have gone for a lot and would have had us at least field goal range. Ron, you said it's weird seeing them put JJ in to run. He wasn't a runner in high school. That's not.
I feel like you could debunk that.
That's not entirely.
Seems like a pretty good athlete.
Listen, so when JJ played at 2 main different high schools. He played at Nazareth in Illinois before he transferred to IMG Academy. And then because of Corona and a lot of other things going on, he didn't get a ton of games at IMG. I want to say he played like 16, plus he got hurt. But he was mobile. He wasn't a running quarterback. And that's kind of the difference. There's a difference between being a Lamar Jackson where you're a running quarterback or being a quarterback that's a throw-first quarterback that can run the ball. JJ is a very smooth runner, but also it's something they've done all season. So even if you said, okay, this guy didn't run the ball out of high school, and he ran it enough, but high school is different. His arm was enough to beat every single team that they played because he really has a great arm. But it's something that they have done all season. All season long, they have worked JJ into here, and they've ran him a lot. Just the last game we played, I think it was against Northwestern, JJ had 2 big runs. He had some big runs against Nebraska. He is very good with the ball in his hands, running the. Now he's not a running quarterback, but we use him a lot in the run game because we do a lot of option plays, and he is a better runner than Cade McNamara is. So when Cade's in and you're running an option play, the defense is pretty keyed in on the running back. And even if the defense crashes the running back and Cade decides to keep, Cade's only getting a few yards. Whereas we've seen plenty of times this season where JJ's ran 15, 20, 25 yards when he's been in the game. It is easy to nitpick these things when they don't work. JJ has not been a problem for us all season.
It's because he fumbled the first time. Like, even if he just fumbled that time, I don't feel like people would be, they'd still be mad. But because he fumbled the first time, or it didn't end up costing Michigan.
But on the play that was fumbled away at the end of the game, it was not him running the ball. He didn't fumble on a designed run play for the quarterback, right? Like they were putting he was either handing off the ball or he was passing the football. He wasn't supposed to be running with the football. So that's where it's even, okay, so you're mad because he had a loose, and it was a sloppy fumble, the one in the red zone that Michigan got lucky that the state Williams defender kicked the ball out of bounds, right?
I thought that was the game right there. I was so sad.
That was rough. Well, no, weren't we tied at that time?
We were. It was 30-30.
Yeah. It was
but 30. He tried to scoop and score. He tried
to take points off the board is what he tried to do there. But we have run him this year. This is not new. This mixing JJ into the game is not new. It's something we've done all season. And everyone says, oh, I don't like 2 quarterbacks, or oh, you're messing with Cade's rhythm. That hasn't been the case all season. This has been something we've done, and not one time this season have I seen JJ come in for a couple plays and then Cade go in and throw a bad pass because he was out of the. Like, I haven't seen that. This is just not how it's happened. And Cade played great today. It didn't matter when JJ come in. It's something to give the defense a different look, and it's worked all season. And if you don't like it, that's fine. But we didn't lose the game because of disruption. We lost the game for a million mistakes, one of which was a miscommunicated handoff that he pulled and was going to try to throw. And I don't know the play call in that situation, and I don't know if that was Corum's mistake or JJ's mistake. If it was Corum's mistake, then would it have mattered if Cade was in the game? Would it have made a difference? If
it's Corum's mistake, and even if it's not, all it proves is he's not better than Kenneth Walker.
Oh, stop it.
What do you mean stop it? One guy had 5 touchdowns today.
Yeah, one guy got to run against Michigan's defense.
Gordon M. Good. Great name, by the way. Gordon Good is fantastic. Love the double G's. He said, you should smile because you're going to smack Ohio State.
That's not true. We're going to get smacked by Ohio State.
That's one of the things I kind of want to point out with Michigan State moving forward, right? Is you're 8-0, you're going to be in the college football playoff discussion by proxy of you being number 5 or number 6, right? I don't think any of us really expect to beat Ohio State, but guys, it's okay to dream. It's fine until that week comes, until Michigan State plays Ohio State and they play them on the field. Don't get discouraged. Start booking your trips to Indianapolis. Speak it into existence. Give that LeVar Ball, LaMelo Ball type feel, where you just know this is going to happen. He's going to win Rookie of the Year. You're going to beat Ohio State. That's what you have to believe, and don't rob yourselves of that joy. Because I know it's very easy to look at it and say, oh, this is a truck coming, and we're right into oncoming traffic. Don't do that. You made it first your past real hurdle, right? You thought it would be Miami. Miami ended up being no good. I think they ended up beating Pitt today, although it was 31-17 and then 31-31, so the game could have gone either way. Again, obviously Miami not very good. Didn't know that at the time that Michigan State played them, but just don't rob yourselves of this joy. Enjoy today, enjoy beating Michigan, and allow yourselves to dream. Allow yourselves to dream about winning the Big Ten, about beating Ohio State, because even if you don't beat Ohio State, I think both of these teams are better than Penn State are. So I expect Ohio State to make the playoff. What that would probably mean is the winner of this game, Michigan State, obviously, has kind of the front track to go to the Rose Bowl. And even if you think, Ryan talking to these poor fans to spend their money on ticket, oh, Matt, F you, bro. F somebody else who said Tucker's coaching for the LSU job. I don't like you either. There's a whole bunch of people I'm trying to Dikembe Mutombo, Ben Wallace block right now. Can we do that, DSN? Can we block these people? But you probably have the inside track to the Rose Bowl right now, where if Ohio State goes to the playoff, because the Rose Bowl isn't a playoff game this year. You beat Michigan, you should end up higher than them unless you lose to Maryland or something crazy like that. And then all you have to do is beat Penn State. And I think you are better than Penn State. And even if you don't think the Rose Bowl means as much as it once did, I share that opinion. I know Don, who writes for DSN, also shares that opinion. It's still cool to go to a New Year's Six bowl game. So don't take this moment for granted is really all I would say. And just allow yourselves to dream a little bit. I think we have Purdue next week. Should be a win, but we saw Purdue take down the number 2 team in the country earlier this year. So maybe not.
Iowa not exactly number 2.
Well, they were at the time. But yeah, man, just enjoy this win, and it's okay to think about the future. Don't try and hedge your bet on you just think Ohio State's going to run over you. Is that going to be the case? I mean, probably. But even if you lose to Ohio State, this could be a very special season for Michigan State. It could end up being a 12-win season with the bowl game.
I mean, I would argue that almost no matter what happens from here on out, it's a special season for Michigan State. Just based on...
I know, but you could win 12 games and a bowl game. Well, with the bowl game.
Yeah. And that would be incredible. I mean, technically, you can win 15 games as we sit here right now.
I mean, that's going to happen. I just want to temper their expectations.
We're just being a little bit
Kenneth
realistic.
Walker for Heisman, Michigan State for the Natty.
It is...
Iowa, we don't play Iowa, but they did get smoked by Wisconsin. We don't play Wisconsin either.
Technically still on the table. And you do avoid Wisconsin.
Well, avoid. We'd smack Wisconsin, bro.
You would smack Iowa.
We'd smack Wisconsin. Wisconsin scored 13 points against Michigan. Yeah, we scored 3 times.
Wisconsin's defense is pretty sweet.
You scored 31 on them. Imagine what we would do. Imagine what we would do.
Defense is pretty sweet.
Imagine what we would do.
Michigan's got to figure out their red zone offense.
That's the other thing for today is Payne Thorne didn't play very well at all. Obviously, he had the first pick, which I didn't think hurt Michigan State at the time because it was really like a coffin corner punt. Exactly. Michigan was on the 2. They got to the 7, scored a 93-yard touchdown, so that part sucked. But that wasn't because of the interception. And then he threw it right at Dax Hill's face, and the ball got bounced up in there. But that
was a mistake.
To his credit, he made some big-time throws when he needed to. Not a whole bunch, but there was the 4th down play that ended up leading to a touchdown where I think he threw it to Naylor and Dax Hill caught him from behind. And then, obviously, by way of all of our touchdowns today, Kenneth Walker ran it in. And then he threw it to, I believe it was Reed, towards like the corner of the goal line, not the corner of the end zone because they didn't get in the end zone on that play. But Kenneth Walker ran it in after Horse pushed him in. So while it wasn't Thorne's best game at all, I thought he played pretty well in the second half, where he just made the throws that he needed to make to continue to move Michigan State down the field. And he knew he wasn't going to be the focal point of the offense, and he played mistake-free in the second half. Not the first half, but in the second half.
Gordon, I'm not sure which team you're a fan of, but I wish I could have your optimism. Listen, I'll do you one better than a post game. If Michigan beats Ohio State this year, I'll send you a gift card because you will spoken it into existence. Listen, I just watched, for the second time this season, Mike McDonald's defense fall apart in the second half. Ohio State's offense is incredible. I mean,
it's like the best offense in the country.
It is the best offense in the country. It's not like that. It is the best offense in the country.
Until they meet Cal Holiday and Xavier Henderson.
I do not know
Then
how.
it's over.
We don't have the pieces on defense.
I don't
care who's coaching our defense. I don't see Michigan having the pieces on defense to contain Ohio State's offense this season. I just don't see it happening. And it's not like earlier in the season where Ohio State was vulnerable, because early in the season they're often vulnerable. We've seen them lose how many games early in the season.
They lost to Virginia Tech and won the national title.
And they get things cleaned up.
Virginia Tech was like 6-6.
But it wasn't because of their offense, it was because their defense was horrible. Ohio State's defense was horrible at the beginning of the season. They essentially fired their defensive coordinator. They did not legitimately fire him, but...
Maybe Michigan should do the same thing, am I right?
They stripped his play calling duties. I don't think we have even the pieces, no matter what we call on defense, to contain Ohio State this season.
I think Gordon's a Michigan fan because he keeps calling them Ohio.
It is possible. It might be.
That's very un-Spartan-like behavior.
Matt is trolling, which is funny.
No, Matt's correct.
Naylor's not.
I think 70 is the answer you're looking for, Matt.
Goodness.
If Naylor plays,
oh my goodness,
they'd score 70, but
Naylor.
But 50 would have done, 40 would have done. Hell, 37 did it.
The only thing,
right, that's the important part. Mel Tucker 2-0 against Jim Harbaugh.
The only thing
run him out of town.
The only thing Naylor playing would change is Reed would get less passes, and he is by far the person you want to be passing to the most, because Reed is a fantastic player. Absolutely.
So good.
Absolutely awesome.
The Lions need wide receivers, huh?
What year is he in? Is it his third, fourth year?
He's at least a junior, because he's definitely been in some mock drafts.
Yeah. No,
so
he's
Reed can come out for the NFL and come to the Lions.
It will be and come to the Lions. It'll be interesting.
That's the important part.
He's sweet. He's really good. Naylor, I stand by what I said on the podcast. He's a one-trick pony. He runs down the field fast.
Pretty good trick.
It's a good trick if it works.
You've seen guys succeed off that trick in the NFL.
Deshaun Jackson's not very happy right now, and that's all he does now.
He has a bum-ass quarterback.
Oh, you need to stop.
That's right. Just like Sanders still does.
I do. I am very. I shouldn't say happy. Actually, it's kind of frustrating. But all the coach people disappeared. All the people that said it's a coaching loss, it's a loss on Jim. All those people disappeared when I asked you to give specifics. So I guess we'll call that a wash. Can we all agree that all the QBs that played today throw a better ball than Goff? Stop it. Please stop.
That's unfair. What is going on with your name, though? Caleb Allen Creighton Roberts? It's a hell of a name. That's almost as good as Gordon Good. Not quite.
Matt, I've put on a lot of weight. I told you. I got a gut. If I stand up and turn sideways, you'll ask if we're better.
I know. You know who looks great in green, though, Matt, is Paul Bunyan.
Oh, my goodness.
Paul Bunyan looks great in green. Paul Roshan, not so great. Paul Bunyan, fantastic. Renewed his lease in East Lansing this year. Going to next year, too, because we just keep this train rolling, right?
Yeah, you better hope so.
Well, it's going to happen. Harbaugh hasn't beat Tucker yet, so I don't know what he's doing.
Tucker's not going to be here next year. I don't know that's what he said.
That's true. That's what somebody else said. He's going to be
I want to get that out there right now. I don't believe that is true. I don't think Tucker's going anywhere.
If Tucker leaves, it's because Michigan State won like 12-1 or 11-2.
That's also
and like at the time, like I guess it'd be upsetting, but if you're 12-1, you're like, hey.
It's like, good job. Congratulations.
Right,
Thank you for your service.
That is one thing, and we talked a little bit about it on the podcast, and I was thinking about it last night, funny enough, is I think if Tucker does leave, it's not going to be for another college job. I think he is an NFL guy, so if the NFL comes calling, but I think that will take more of a proven track record of success. I think he'll have to have 3 or 4 years at Michigan State where he's at 10 or 11 wins before the NFL is like, hey, come give this a try. Not that there aren't better college jobs in Michigan State, because there are, but I think the security he would get at Michigan State, the power he gets at Michigan State, and Michigan State can easily make him like a top 10 paid coach.
He's already like top couple in the Big Ten.
I think he's like top 12. I think he's Penn State doesn't disclose what they pay James Franklin, but I would assume Franklin makes more than Tucker, not by a lot. I would just assume. So say safeguard, he's third in the Big Ten, right? I think he's still like top 12 in the country, and I think Michigan. So he's making $6 million. With incentives, he could make 7. I don't see Michigan State hesitating to push that to 8 or 9. Now, if somebody comes calling with like 12, 12-13, right?
I mean,
and they're like, hey, Tucker,
I
12-13 and you get everything. But he has the assistant coaching budget at Michigan State now. It's different than when Saban left. The administration now takes football way more seriously than they did. But I do think it's a threat that the NFL comes calling. But I said this when the Spartans were they were kind of favored to hire Luke Fickell before they hired Jim Harbaugh. Or not Jim Harbaugh, Mel Tucker, excuse me. Before they hired Mel Tucker, we don't want Jim Harbaugh. Before they hired Mel Tucker was, it was, hey, he's going to go to Michigan State, and then eventually he's going to go to Ohio State. Is if Ohio State wants your coach, or if the NFL wants your coach, it's because he's doing a damn good job, right? The NFL isn't going to come steal Mel Tucker if he's going 7-5 every year. Like, that's just not going to happen. He's going to have to make a footprint.
Matt, I'm going to answer your questions in a second. I want to hit a couple things.
I already told him Naylor would get 70.
No, he asked other questions. You relax. So first thing, I definitely don't think MSU is going to get outbid for Tucker. If Tucker leaves, it's not going to be for money. I do think that
12 or 13.
I do think that the LSU job that I don't think he's going to get offered. I do think he would leave for that just because of how good of a job it is. It's actually something that we talked about on podcast, not specifically Tucker leaving, just jobs in general.
2 podcasts ago, I think. So if you guys want to go back and listen.
Just jobs in general in college football we were talking about.
Spotify, Apple
and
Podcast.
LSU is one of the best spots just based on a lot of things. They're talent-based, the fact that it is a different ball game. They don't have the same rule set and academic rigmarole that you have to do at a lot of these Big Ten schools. It is one of the top, 5, 6 jobs in all of college football. Yeah. It really is that good, whereas Michigan State is going to be closer to 20 as far as a job in college football. It's not always about the money, but if the NFL is his goal, he doesn't need to go to LSU and take risks to make that happen. He can continue to build at Michigan State until an NFL team
like Matt Campbell,
comes calling.
who like NFL teams are reportedly interested in. He's at Iowa State.
This is agent.
Yeah, he's been there way longer than Tucker's been at Michigan State. But if the NFL comes calling for Tucker, again, it's not because he's going 7-5 and making the Buffalo Wild Wings Bowl or Quick Lane Bowl every year.
In Gordon,
because Michigan State.
Gordon says he's a diehard Spartan, by the way.
Why do you call him Ohio? Gordon? Are you a state of Michigan man?
Screw that. He is, because he says when they don't play each other, go blue. And I respect that.
That's not a diehard Spartan, Gordon.
Because
I'm sorry.
I'm in the same spot with Michigan State. It's not true. I say it all the time. I'm in the same spot with Michigan State. If Michigan State's not playing Michigan, and it doesn't affect Michigan.
Matt, tell them they're lying.
If the game does not affect Michigan, because sometimes, MSU and Michigan, I think we going head-to-head, we might need MSU to lose a game so that if we could, God forbid, ever have a path to Indy sometime, then I would be rooting against MSU. But outside of that...
Maybe if Gaddis is your coach.
Stop. Outside of that, I had no problem rooting for MSU winning games.
I like you, man. You lie a lot.
I respect that, Gordon. Ron said that Michigan needs to get more creative with running back in our weapons, straight up the middle, every handoff.
That is something that AJ Riley, who does the podcast with us, he pointed out when we were watching the game too, is he didn't like how often Michigan was going up the middle trying to attack Michigan State's defense. So you at least have one defender there, Mr. Wilson.
Josh Gaddis as a coordinator leaves a ton to be desired. I said it before. I said it before the season. If this offense for Michigan isn't elite beyond elite with all that we have set up, really, our offensive line is a top 4 unit in all of college football, and you could argue it might be the best offensive line in college football. It's a fantastic offensive line, and we have a decent couple quarterbacks to rely on. However we want to do that, whether you think it should be JJ or Cade in there, we have solid quarterback play. That alone, even if we didn't have the weapons we do, and we have some nice weapons, even if you didn't, that alone should be the grounds of a really good offense if you're a play caller worth your salt. And Michigan fans, for some reason, are loath to criticize Josh Gaddis. And I don't know what it is. I really don't, because I don't know what this guy has ever done that makes people think that he has the answers, because he does a lot of questionable things. And he has improved, undoubtedly, since he's been here. His sequencing has gotten better. He's become more willing to attack other teams' weaknesses. But the problem is, he was starting from down here on the improvement scale. And just because he's come up to here, we need him up here. And he's not it when it comes to that. He does not. Today is a perfect example of going away from what works and the struggles in the red zones. A team with the offensive line that Michigan has that is able to run the ball and have the threat of running the ball the way Michigan does should not struggle like this in the red zone. That is an indictment on your play calling and play calling. It's not like we turn the ball over in the red zone 15 times. We just don't get first downs and don't get into the end zone. It's unbelievable. Like if your quarterback's throwing picks in the red zone, you're fumbling the ball away. All right, that's not on the play caller, right? But if you're not doing that, then it is. But Matt very specifically, stop, Matt.
Muck Michigan.
Matt wanted to know what we learned about these teams. He said we've had questions about both of these teams all season.
And again, so credit to AJ because he said it when he was here. I'm bummed he couldn't stick around for this, but he said both these teams are top 10 teams, and I agree with him. So we talked about it even a little bit on the podcast. Is the top 10 for each team felt a little bit fraudulent, but at the same time, man, somebody in college football has to be ranked in the top 10. You need 10 teams to fill those spots. So even if it's not a traditional top 10, where you think the 8th team might be as good as like the second best team or something like that, I think both these teams are for real, and I think both these teams are good. I thought you saw it with the way Michigan was able to jump on a team like Michigan State, as good as, again, I think Michigan State is. And for Michigan State, their ability to fight back and win this game against a good team like Michigan, I think these are two of the more complete teams in the country, even though I know all of us watch these teams. We at least watch one of these teams every week, depending on your fandom. You might watch both. I assume Mr. Gordon Good, again, a great name, just like Gordon Gecko. I assume he probably watches both teams every week, just like I do. And so you have more nitpicky things to say about them because you see them, you see all of their flaws, and you're saying, well, Georgia does this, Michigan and Michigan State don't, so they're not as good. But I think each of these teams deserve to be in the top 10, and I think even Michigan should still be in the top 10 after losing to Michigan State because it was a very close game. And again, I think Michigan State's going to be ranked like 5th or 6th.
And I would be surprised. Yeah, I agree 100%. I think Michigan State's going to be around 5 or 6. I think Michigan's going to be around 9 or 10. And who knows? They could swap spots. Michigan was 6 coming into this game. Michigan State was 8. They could just swap spots. That wouldn't be all that surprising if that were to happen. I would be surprised if Michigan slipped out of the top 10. But let's be real. The rankings, at least for Michigan right now, are not that important. Right? Because Michigan, at this point, you're not getting in the playoff unless you win the Big Ten. So that means you win out, you beat Ohio State, and then obviously Michigan State
loses 2 games.
You have to lose 2 games.
Ohio State.
So at that point, the ranking isn't that important, right? Like it's fan fodder. It's cool. It's we're a top 10 team. But at the end of the day, the ranking doesn't matter that much for Michigan right now, other than it's cool to say, okay, we're a top 10 football team. It's frustrating that you lose a game like this because I think a unbiased observer would not come out of this game thinking that Michigan State's a clear-cut better team. I think Michigan, for the most part, played better football today and just made way too many mistakes.
I do. I also think Michigan State, obviously they spotted them 10 points at first, and they gave them 2 picks. So, if you looked at the box score, Michigan absolutely dominated. The turnover battle actually ended up even 2-2, although Michigan missed on a 4th down, so it was probably 3-2, but you won't see that in the box score in favor of Michigan State. But they had the 2 picks. They might have both been in the first quarter. For sure, one was. They were definitely both in the first half.
But the one was a punt. We agreed.
Yeah.
So it's
that part's true.
It's kind of almost not a turnover. And
yeah, the one and they weren't really in field goal range. Like, it would have been like a 57-yard field goal, which you probably have the leg strength for, but most college kickers aren't hitting that.
And it's
as much as I like Coughlin.
And Matt specifically asked what we learned about these teams. Well, other than the fact that I would agree we learned that they're both for real. Both of these teams are for real. You can say that for
they're both
sure.
Good for the first time in years.
We had some things confirmed, right? I believe that we confirmed that Michigan State's offensive line is the weakness of their team.
Not really a great punt, Matt. Michigan ended up scoring anyway.
Well, no, it was a great punt.
I guess it was, but it's not like it bit them back.
I think that we confirmed that Michigan State, the weakness of your team is the offensive line. And that is probably why we see a lot of inconsistencies with the offense in general.
Yeah, I mean, the offensive line, as you guys probably know, if you listen to local radio or watch the games and you notice it, Michigan State does a lot of shifting. And this is actually a point that me and Paul disagreed on in the game. Paul thought Michigan's defensive line dominated the game. I thought they played better than Michigan State's defensive line, but for the most part, I actually thought the offensive line held up fairly well. It wasn't great. It wasn't a dominating performance like I thought Michigan's offensive line had, but I didn't think the offensive line was just consistently bullied by Michigan's defensive line.
Now, on the flip side, Michigan's defense, which we knew coming into the season was going to have some rough patches, Michigan's defense against decent offenses, definitely a weakness, which is sad because Michigan's defensive line is fantastic. Michigan has one of the best defensive lines probably in the country, certainly in the conference. Their defensive line really gets after it. Thorne will tell you that Michigan's defensive line really gets after it. And we have some great players like Dax Hill out there too, but we've had moments of blunder, moments of missing assignments, and moments of horrible tackling, and the linebacker play has to be so much better. The linebackers have been brutal.
Hashtag great talent being wasted.
Ron, I don't know what Ron is talking about. Ron says 4th and 1.
That's a different Ron. That's not Ron Wilson.
This is Ron Angel, and I think it might be more like Ron Devil. Fourth and 1, deep in green territory, and you kick field goals. That never happened, Ron. I don't know what game you were watching.
No, it was like fourth and 4 or something. 4th and 3 when they kicked the field goal.
Jim Harbaugh's been one of the more aggressive coaches in college football this season. It's not like we're not.
Yeah, that was another thing I was actually kind of scared of is when Michigan was like 3rd and 3. I was like, well, they have 2 shots to get 3 yards now.
Yeah,
it's not just you stop them once and that's it. That's why some of those negative plays that Michigan had, and they didn't have so many of them, were like negative yardage. But the ones they did have, I thought they did come on 3rd down, where it's 3rd and 2 or 3rd and 3. And now you have to force Michigan to make a decision, whether you're going to punt it or whether you're going to kick a field goal and not go for it. And one, I think, ended up being the fake punt, although it might have been like 4th and 6 where the punter bobbled it. And then another one was a Moody field goal that they ended up making because he's just fantastic.
Matt, for the record, we can skip this entire game on the next podcast if that's your wish.
Oh, well, Paul doesn't have to do it.
We don't have to talk about this game at all.
How much Paul talks on the normal podcast, I'll just talk on the next one.
Next week's gonna be a Lions podcast, and why we should trade
during the bye week.
Why we should trade for Tua. It's the why
and Deshaun Jackson. We need wide receiver help.
Why we need to trade for Tua podcast. That's what next week can be. We've covered the post game. We don't need to revisit this at all on Tuesday or whenever we do the podcast.
I tell you, man, this takes a lot out of you, which is why I own a lot of the podcast. And you guys want to talk about the games? I'm like, I kind of already did.
No, it's like I've already said all I had to say.
I'll talk about this. Till the cows come home, baby.
If you want to talk about this on podcast, we need to have Don on the podcast so that we can have a screaming match and murder this man. Another thing that I think that some fans learned today, by the way, although those same critical people may say the end of the game proves that you don't, I believe that we've proved Cade is for real. All the people that have questions about Michigan at quarterback and that they think that Cade's not the guy to get it done or that JJ should be starting. I think that question has been definitively answered both ways. We saw that JJ is still young and raw and prone to making mistakes twice tonight, and we also saw Cade against a decent defense. And it's something we talked about on podcasts, but maybe the people watching this right now don't know. Michigan State's actually had a very good pass defense this season. Michigan State, by yards per attempt, 18th and what is this?
It says Mel 2-0.
Oh my God! Get out of here. Michigan State pass defense has actually been really good this season. 6 yards an attempt they're giving up, just over it before this game. It's good for 18th in the whole country. They've faced a lot of passes. They've given up a lot of completions because teams like Western Kentucky have thrown 65 times against Michigan State. But their defense, for the most part, has actually been really good, and Cade carved them up. And Cade was, it was all over. It was short throws, intermediate throws, deep throws, stuff over the middle, hitting guys in stride on slants where you don't have to break stride or get in a weird position to catch the ball. You look at the 93-yard touchdown by Andrell Anthony. That ball caught itself when it was out of his hand. He hardly even had to throw his hands up to catch the ball to hit him in stride, and that allowed him to keep his momentum and just go. And he hit a couple nice deep shots today, and he should have had another one to Johnson. It was a tad underthrown, but you're going to have, no one's perfect. Not every ball's going to have perfect placement on it. It hit Johnson in the stomach, and he dropped it. Could it have been thrown better? Sure, it could have, but nobody's perfect. So I do think that's something you learned about Michigan, and then obviously reinforcing against good teams the deficiencies that we have on defense, and that we still suck in the red zone because Josh Gaddis is mostly fraudulent, is a play caller. And that is the one thing that I will agree with Ron Devil on, is he said great talent wasted. Not in the spirit.
Hashtag great talent being
wasted. Hashtag great talent being wasted. Not in the spirit that he said it, but on the offensive side of the ball, we are certainly not playing to our potential because of play calling.
I'll throw out the bait for you and any of the Michigan fans listening. If Ronnie Bell plays, does Michigan win this game?
I mean, if one of 10 different things happen differently, Michigan wins this game. If the refs call a touchdown in the end zone, a touchdown. Michigan wins this
Shin
game.
hit, so
His shin hit after he lost control of the
Michigan
ball.
State sucks, by the way.
We're not going to relitigate.
Yeah, Philip here mad about the Arizona Cardinals. Those are ugly.
Michigan socks in shoes.
Those are almost as ugly as anything Jordan puts out for Michigan. Horrible, by the way. One of my biggest beefs with Michigan is they've ruined the Jordan brand, which is almost impossible. Yeah, Philip here mad about the Arizona Cardinals on Thursday night. Me too, because I like the Cardinals and I like Kyler Murray. I just think it's funny that this is the forum you bring that up.
Cardinals are garbage. Kyler Murray's a fraud. Kyler Murray's no touchdowns.
AJ Green's bum ass. Was a good receiver 5 years ago.
Unbelievable.
And then Gordon wants to agree that the Lions are going to go 0-17 and get the number 1 pick.
1-16. Can we please go 1-16?
If they go 0-17, they will get the number 1 pick because they have to.
Oh, I'd actually like to go 2-15. I just don't know where 2 wins are coming from because I don't want to be the second team to have 16 losses.
I'll say this is the best chance for a win is this week against the Eagles. And then the next game against the Bears probably.
I'm going to keep banging my head into this wall with the Lions winning a game. The Lions are going to beat the Eagles this weekend. I'm just going to speak it into existence. I'm going to speak it into existence. It's going to be stupid when the game the Lions wins is like against the Packers or something.
They play the Cardinals in Week 15. The Cardinals are 13-2. We beat them. Or 12-2 or something.
Do Stafford a favor. Help him win that division. I do believe it feels like we're wrapping up here. And we'll say
this will be on YouTube if you tuned in late, which I'm sure you did because we've been going for a minute. An hour actually is impressive. I guess we usually do both of them, and both are like 20 or 30 minutes. So an hour for the combined game seems correct. But if you guys did tune in late, make sure you're listening to the Sports Carnage podcast. You can find us on Podbean, on Apple Podcasts, and on Spotify. And you can listen to this video in its entirety on YouTube at Sports Carnage Podcast, where this video will be up within like the next hour or so.
I don't know about Stanford for MVP, but I do agree that Stafford has a really good shot at winning.
Kyler, AJ Green.
Really good shot at winning.
You know what? Maybe Kenneth Walker can win the NFL MVP too. He'll win the Heisman and the MVP, first person ever.
Listen, Matt is bullying us right now. He said we're ugly.
Oh,
listen,
get out of here, Matt.
I am on a fast food diet right now, and it's causing a lot of breakout and weight gain. Okay, it's not my fault.
Man, I'm the most handsome member of the podcast.
And Ryan is balls deep in Ryan juice right now, so.
I don't know what you're talking about, Matt.
He's got that glow.
That's right. I always got glow.
All right, guys. You have a wonderful time if you're a Michigan State fan celebrating this win. If you're a Michigan fan, put this game behind you as quick as possible. If anybody brings it up, tell them you're sick and you don't feel like having a conversation because that's how you should feel.
Just bring up the Ohio State game. That'll make them feel better.
That's how you should feel after this game is a Michigan fan is sick because you were the better team today and you just made too many mistakes. And it's unfortunate. This is just like last year.
2-0 against Harbaugh, without his players, with the best running back in the country. There you go.